Welcome back to Big Mouth and welcome to the dceu Daily. And today we are exploring the Batman. We are comparing the message of Wonder Woman 1984 compared to what happened in Superman the movie when Superman turns the world on its axis. And we're also going to be discussing this whole idea of HBO Max putting out a trailer about Zack Snyder's trilogy and what that means and what message they're sending to us. So let's explore the Batman. Remember, you can follow me and keep the conversation going over on Twitter at Movies TV Mag. One of the greatest experiences of my geek culture life was watching DC Fandom and seeing Matt Reeves discuss his vision of the Batman. I was very surprised when I saw the man speak because he's got a really soft voice. He's very open, friendly, and positive. I was surprised. I didn't realise that's the kind of person that Matt Reeves was. So that kind of put me at ease straight away. And it was just interesting how he was talking, very complimentary with every kind of iteration of live-action Batman, including the 1960s series, which I just got a box set as a present, which is awesome because that was my first live-action Batman, that Batman movie, which kind of introduced us to that universe and that series later on. But Matt was very complimentary about the past iterations, but talking about his vision and how he wanted a different take, talking about the fact that it's going to be in year 2, but this is an early Batman, but it's not an origin story. Nobody's done that before. It's interesting when you look at Burton's Batman 89, where you don't see a direct origin, but you do see flashbacks to the Waynes being murdered. It's pretty clear that Michael Keaton's Batman is in the early days of being his Batman, I suppose, because he's already Batman. They know of him, right? But people are discussing, this wing freak terrorizes. So they're kind of surprised and kind of a little bit scared of this Batman character in that movie. But what Matt Reeves is doing, what he was explaining at DC Fandom was that actually, in fact, that people are a little bit scared of this. Who is this guy? He's a vigilante. And they don't know much about him. And these are the early days, right? Now, Gotham PD does a prequel thing. It goes to year 1, which is very interesting. So the first kind of thing we will know of this universe is that we're in year 2. This is a work in progress. And the whole story begins when these string of murders happen. But really, the story isn't about the murders. The story is about the Riddler killing these people to send a message to the Batman. Because what this story really is this noir tale. So the Riddler is actually killing these people, leaving riddles, because he wants to clue Batman up on a bigger conspiracy that leads back not only to the murder of the Waynes, but what the Waynes were involved with before they died. And so he wants to educate the Batman on what happened. Now, clearly, this is not Ed Nigma. This is another iteration of the Riddler. I forgot his name now, but it's a different name. So this Riddler is killing people. He is a criminal, but he's killing these people to get Bruce Wayne's, the Batman's, attention. It looks like he already knows that Bruce Wayne is the Batman. So what happens here? Although there's this string of murders, it looks like the Riddler is killing these people and he's giving clues to something else that happened in the past in Gotham. I would say that this kind of Matt Reeves' vision of Gotham City and the Batman is more kind of very similar to what they did on the Gotham TV show. I think Matt Reeves kind of understands that they did tap into something in that show. Very smart. That show was about the villains, but still not necessarily focusing on, but having a recurring role for a very young Bruce Wayne, who ultimately does become Batman at the end of that show. This will focus on the Batman. This will focus on Bruce Wayne. And it's a very interesting story to think that what Matt is actually doing here, he's getting a grenade and he's tossing it in. And although there are these murders, the murders are just there to kind of say to Bruce Wayne, Batman, I want you to know the truth about the core of this city's corruption. I know things. Things happen. I'm going to keep on killing these people and leaving you these riddles until you work it out. And then you have to decide what you're going to do about it. Now, does this mean that this is connected to the Court of Owls? I don't know. And that's because I think they did do a season with the Court of Owls in the Gotham TV show as well. So I think there's some inspiration from that show for Matt Reeves. But he did talk about this being very, very different, but not for difference sake and respecting what's gone before, but doing something incredibly different and unique. Matt Reeves has got full control over what he's doing. Warner Brothers are not interfering. I am very, very excited for this and this movie because I think, look, Matt Reeves is a genius. I mean, I fell in love with his style of storytelling when I saw his Planet of the Apes movies. I thought they were amazing. Amazing films, really talented guy, and he's brought together such an amalgamation of a great cast, which is always important. But just going back to him at DC Fandom, it was amazing how at ease he put me and how confident I am in his ability. I mean, I've been confident in Matt's ability for a very long time, and that's true. But I think that's the kind of story that he's attempting to tell. He's trying to unwrap a conspiracy, and he's just starting off this universe in this movie. This movie is just the beginning. The murders happen. As I say, I think it's the Riddler. He's trying to give some clues to Batman about the history and the corruption of Gotham City, which leads back to his family and something deeper, which, as I say, could be the Court of Owls, could be anything, right? And so it's all really interesting. And I think like the Rogues Gallery in this universe that Matt is kind of creating are kind of in the same place as Batman, where they're born from the corruption, right? The corruption of this city. This is a horrible, gritty, poverty-stricken city to see, to live in. And I think that's in the comics, and that's not really, we've seen it, but we haven't seen it on this level. This is a very dangerous place to live. It is not safe. And even from Matt's first trailer, hopefully we'll get a second trailer really soon, because they have completed production and shooting the movie. So I would like to see another trailer. That would be really exciting. I think people's reaction from that trailer was very positive, and I liked it. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was one of the highlights of DC Fandom. And DC Fandom was a great event. I want a DC Fandom too. I would rather that Warner Brothers and DC stuck to DC Fandom rather than doing a Comic-Con. I think that worked. So I am not an obsessive about Comic-Con. I'm quite happy to sit at home and have a DC Fandom, but also for fans to have the opportunity when the COVID restrictions are over to actually go to DC Fandom while the rest of us can watch it for free at home. That would be awesome, right? I think it's great that fans have the ability to sit at home via their internet, their computers, their devices, and watch this great event. The DC Fandom was a great celebration. It was a great 24 hours. I remember it well. It was one of the most exciting, as I say, one of my exciting kind of experiences. One of the most exciting experiences from being a DC stan. And it was a great day to see the future of this franchise, because there's a lot of talk about the past, but I think the DCEU has a great future. Obviously, Matt Reeves, the Batman, isn't part of the DCEU as such, but with this multiverse strategy, everyone's involved in this universe now. And shortly I'm going to read you an article from Heroic Hollywood talking about how the Batman could, it's an editorial, could be involved in Flashpoint. So this is not information, this is not a leak, this is just a theory. And I always like looking into other people's theories because I've got a lot of theories about this. A lot of people are saying, well, Matt Reeves wouldn't have that. But I was surprised that Matt Reeves is on the same page with them with doing a spin-off, because they're doing spin-offs on all their DC movies, right? And so if he's on the same page as them with that, it means he may be happy to be part of the kind of shared universe experience. But I think, obviously, we've already been told by Walter Hamada and that the Batman is in Earth 2. And so I think this is the beginning of constructing new Earths. I don't think they're going to construct many, many Earths straight away. It will take time. But if a creative comes in who they fancy and says, can I construct my own DC Earth? I think that will happen and that will be exciting. And it's a very natural way of having kind of multiple Earths, if you like. I'm sure there's like pre-existing ones out there where characters will come into the central universe, which will also be exciting, but it will also be kind of really awesome and interesting and exciting if, you know, we see these creatives actually constructing their own DC universes as well. And I actually feel that that's what's going to happen with Matt Reeves' The Batman universe. I think he's going to create his own Superman and Wonder Woman. That's how I feel he's going to do. Also at DC Fandom, it was great to hear him say his love of Batman since he was a young boy. Now, everyone says I'm a big fan of this character when they're working on the character. And, you know, you don't really hardly believe them, do you? But I believe Matt has the knowledge, especially with Batman. But I think it goes beyond that for Matt. I think he's a pure DC fan. And I would love to see him kind of arc out his own Superman and his own Wonder Woman. And I don't think Warner Bros. Would ever stop him from doing that. It doesn't interfere with anything because we're in the multiverse now, baby, right? So that's very interesting. And so that's my take on the Batman from kind of re-watching what Matt was saying. I think it's obvious that these initial murders we see are not the story. These murders we see, which I believe the Riddler is committing, are just a way to get the Batman's attention so he can leave him clues to what he wants to expose. He's trying to expose the corruption of Gotham in the past, and maybe it's a threat to the present. Clearly, it involves the Waynes. As I say, maybe the Court of Owls, I don't know. But I feel that's what's going on here with this movie. And I think it's awesome. I think he's really sat down, Matt, and really, really thought about this. And when you look at the design of the Batman costume, for example, he's thought about this, you know, to have the two, to split the gun that killed Bruce's parents in two and make the Batman insignia, the logo. I mean, that's something you sit down and think about. Now, I'm not sure if that's something from the comics or something that Matt came up with himself, but it's freaking awesome, right? It really is. And so I expect a really good experience going to see this film next March. It's only March. So where are we now? We're in April. I know we've got still about just under 11 months now or something. It's still a while, but it's the first film of next year. So I'm really, really excited for this film. There were rumours of Matt Reeves doing this film for a very long time before he agreed. He was in long, drawn-out negotiations. At the time, Ben Affleck was still part of the property, and Matt wanted to cast his own man and do his own thing. And as I've always said, I think that's the right thing. And I think they were trying to force... Warner Brothers wanted Ben Affleck to continue as Batman, and they wanted Matt Reeves to use Ben Affleck, and Matt Reeves didn't want to. And I know a lot of Snyder stands were like, that's bad, and Matt Reeves is a bad person. But we've seen how supportive he's been to Zack. I don't think he's a bad person because he wants to tell his own story and cast his own man. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. That's what freedom, artistic integrity and creative freedom is all about. And we've been fighting for that for years now for Zack Snyder. And for Ben Affleck, by the way. Just the other day, we hashtag make the Batfleck movie. We can't have it both ways, can we? And so I think this is a very, very clever writer-director. Again, you're seeing something very interesting now. You're seeing James Gunn, who wrote and directed The Suicide Squad, totally his vision. You're getting these kind of Quentin Tarantino types, if you like, who just do everything. right? Zack Snyder's a bit different because Zack Snyder didn't write Man of Steel, but he directed it. He didn't write Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, but he directed it and had a say on some of the core elements of the film. He did have a handle on constructing the story for his Justice League movie. But he's a bit of a different creative, you know. When you talk about Todd Phillips, wrote and directed the Joker movie, these are different creatives to Zack. Zack's great, but I'm just telling you, these are different people with different types of visions. And it's interesting that actually the studio is really happy to work with these types who just construct their own story, get on with their own movie. And then you're not having to bring people, you know, if they want the script doing by somebody else, but they're just writing the story, they'll bring their own people in, right? Bit different with Batman versus Superman, because Ben Affleck brought his own person in, which I think is odd, seeing this was supposed to be Zack's vision. So there were problems there, really, from the very beginning, as far as I'm concerned. But I love Batman versus Superman, obviously. But I think that's just odd, and I think that's weird. And these kind of writer-directors, like James Gunn, like Matt Reeves, are the kind of old types who just do it all, just do everything. They are really great directors and visionaries, and yes, but kind of Zack's more about the art we see on the screen, right? I think that's fair to say. So these guys are kind of different. So it's just interesting to me how there doesn't seem to be any beef between Warner Brothers and Matt Reeves. He's said that he's allowed to do whatever he wants. James Gunn has said he got very few notes, and if he wanted to ignore those notes, he did. But then Patty Jenkins had some problems with the studio. But when you look at the film and people's complaints about the film, then kind of it's interesting for once the fans were actually on point with the studio with their fears over the movie. I think one of the things that I would never get rid of that Themyscira sequence, and we'll talk about that later on. But I certainly think it's odd because, as I say, Matt Reeves and James Gunn have done their films. You know, production's gone smoothly, apart from a few COVID issues for Matt Reeves, but that's finished now, that film. So he can go in his offices now, they can edit the movie, they can do music, sound effects, everything, post-production, right? So everything's running smoothly on the Batman. I think this could be one of the best live-action iterations of the Batman. I already like where we're going with this. And when you cast Robert Pattinson, and it's interesting how Robert was cast, because Robert went to Matt. Matt wasn't ready to do his casting yet, and, he spoke to Christopher Nolan, Robert Pattinson, and said, listen, he was kind of bending his ear about it, and then he went to Matt Reeves, and he said, listen, I've got a handle on this character, I love this character, and I'm desperate to play this character, and obviously he convinced Matt that he was the right person. There's been rumours that there's been problems between Pattinson and Reeves, but listen, directors work actors hard. That's not groundbreaking. We know too much these days. We know too much what's going on behind the scenes. I don't like it. People are not perfect. Things happen. Get the fuck over it. You're not perfect either. So stop judging others. I can't wait for this movie. It's going to be really, really exciting. And I think that Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves together have worked out something brilliant. I mean, it's the situation we got with the Joker movie, wasn't it? When, people were saying, oh, Joaquin Phoenix was so intense and sometimes he went a bit too far. But, an artistic temperament is very different to a normal working environment. It can't be all pleases and thank yous. Things happen. People get into people's faces. This is the environment we get in. We saw what happened with Tom Cruise and one of his cameramen, I think, right? Or camera people, should I say. These things do happen. It's a passionate business, right? So you've got to remember, when you're working with artists, it's very different to working with your boss down the mill or down McDonald's. This is a very different environment, and it's a very triggered environment. It's a very passionate environment because everyone's passionate about creating their art. So when you hear about things happening, yes, people argue. In the locker room, in sports, people arguing, getting in each other's faces. That's never going to change. It's a passionate business, right? And there's a lot of pressure on these people to perform, in either to perform as an artist or to perform as a sports athlete. And so I have no problem with the rumours I've been hearing. I think this film is going to be a really special film, and we really are at the beginning of this character's journey as well. And to see the kind of first steps of the Batmobile and the first steps of the Batcave and see it improve in time, it's going to be really awesome. And to see the construction of this Bat family, which I think will happen, that's exciting as well. And as I've already said earlier on in this video, I do expect Matt to create his own universe here, his own DC characters. So other movies could span out of this Batman trilogy as well. So in a way, this is your Iron Man, isn't it? And then maybe after the trilogy, Robert Pattinson's Batman will kind of cameo in the other characters' movies. So this is what's exciting. This is an exciting element of the multiverse strategy. And I'm really, really looking forward to it. Now, we continue this conversation, how Ezra Miller's The Flash could bring Robert Pattinson's Batman into the DCEU. So, hot off the release of Zack Snyder's Justice League, the future of the DCEU and DC films in general couldn't be more exciting, I agree. In 2022, we will see Robert Pattinson as the Batman, along with the long-awaited film adaptation of The Flash starring Ezra Miller, hit the big screen. Robert Pattinson succeeds Ben Affleck as the newest Caped Crusader on the big screen, under the direction of acclaimed filmmaker Matt Reeves. The former Twilight star will bring a younger Batman to life in a universe separate from the ongoing DCEU. While many fans lament the loss of Ben Affleck's standalone Batman movie, which I do as well, by the way, let's be clear, the Academy Award winner will reprise his role in The Flash, where he will likely be joined by Michael Keaton, who is expected to return as his version of the iconic character he made famous in Tim Burton's Batman '89 and Batman Returns. The Flash, which will be directed by IT director Andy Muschietti, finds Ezra Miller's Barry Allen using his abilities to rescue his late mother Nora Allen. Unfortunately for Barry, this ruptures the multiverse and somehow brings in Michael Keaton's Batman into the mix. Through the introduction of the multiverse, the highly anticipated film will expand the DCEU in the most radical way possible and will embrace the history of the iconic comic book publication on the big screen. Oh yes, so yes, while Robert Pattinson's The Batman is set in a separate continuity from the DCEU, just the mere presence of Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton in The Flash opens up a mother box of possibilities for the future of DC films. While it seems likely that Matt Reeves' film, as well as his upcoming Gotham PD prequel series on HBO Max, will remain a standalone entity, it wouldn't be beyond the realm of possibility that we could see Robert Pattinson's Batman appear in the DCEU, and perhaps The Flash is the most plausible way it could work out. For once in Zack Snyder's Justice League, in Zack Snyder's Justice League, fans were given a glimpse at all the potential that was afoot for the future of the DCEU had Zack Snyder been given the opportunity to complete his Justice League trilogy. During the film's epilogue, we get a further glimpse into the post-apocalyptic future that the Flash warned Bruce Wayne of in the nightmare sequence featured in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. During the epilogue, Jared Leto's Joker has a mesmerizing exchange with Batman as he taunts him with the prospect of many alternate timelines in which Batman destroyed the world because he didn't have the cojones to die. While Warner Brothers considers the 2017 cut of the film as canon for the DCEU, the mere existence of the Snyder Cut prompts further discussions about alternate timelines and realities which the Flash himself is involved with. In perhaps the most acclaimed sequence of the film, the Flash uses his ability to travel through time to save the Justice League and the world from certain destruction. Warner Brothers reportedly did not want the Flash to time travel in Justice League given their plans for his solo film, but the incredible sequence serves as an example as to how Andy Muschietti's film can further embrace the complicated nature of Barry's abilities and the expansion of the DCEU through their ambitious multiverse approach. Also, while the Flash is looking to keep Barry Allen at the centre of the story, the impressive cast surrounding Ezra Miller's showcases the expansive scope of the DCEU. While we have some of the staple characters from the Flash comics, like Barry's parents and Iris West, part of the story, fans were caught by surprise in February when it was announced that actress Sasha Calle joined the film as Supergirl. Details regarding Supergirl's specific role remain scarce, including whether or not she's even part of the currently established DCEU timeline. But Sasha Calle had a chemistry read with Ezra Miller, signifying that she has a solid role in the story. And isn't it interesting? The first kind of Arrowverse character that Kara in Arrowverse was introduced to was actually Barry Allen. And the first, I think, unless she's met other heroes, right? The first it's implausible that she has. The first DCEU character she's introduced to is Ezra Miller's The Flash. So that's kind of interesting and exciting. And I think kind of the chemistry being great between them is really exciting. And I can't wait to see how those components work out in the film. With Michael Keaton currently signed on to return as his version of Batman 30 years later, we already have a hint as to how The Flash is looking to explore the decade's worth of big screen stories from DC films. If the film can bring back this classic iteration of Batman, who's to say it can't bring back even more? Imagine if somehow Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy was brought into the mix, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt's Robin John Blake appear, or better yet, Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne. Perhaps The Flash can go even wilder with more characters from DC films' past catalogue, including Brandon Routh's Superman. Yes, there's rumours, who was recently featured in the Arrowverse's Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover 13 years after he portrayed him in Superman Returns. Speaking of Crisis on Infinite Earths, Ezra Miller himself had a show-stopping cameo appearance in the crossover where he encountered Grant Gustin's iteration of The Flash, further establishing the concept of the multiverse on both big and small screens. Yet, basically, what that Crisis on Infinite Earths cameo did was say, we've started. This is all going to be interconnected now, no matter what universe you're from, whether you're on TV or film. And Sarnoff said it in the Variety hit piece as well. This is the direction they're going in. And I like that idea. But the most important thing is the normies and the central fans, the mainstream audiences, like these kind of things as well. Cameos, different appearances, things being more interconnected than self-contained. And some people are wrongly saying to you the multiverse strategy means that more films will be self-contained. No, some will have their own stories and some won't, but you'll always get a little cameo, even if it's in the post-credit scenes, so not to interfere with the film itself. This will be a more interconnected, crossover, kind of friendly universe, and I think this is the right way to go at it. The multiverse approach looks to be the hottest storytelling device for comic book film and television right now. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is looking to explore their version of the multiverse with hints of its setup in WandaVision, leading up to the aptly titled Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is currently in production, as well as the much-anticipated Spider-Man No Way Home, bringing Jamie Foxx's Electro, Alfred Molino's Doc Ock back to the big screen. Of course, those two villains' appearances has led to more rumours about the possible return of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's versions of Peter Parker appearing on screen with Tom Holland. It's safe to say that the possibilities are truly infinite when it comes to what The Flash can bring, and given that Warner Brothers is still looking to expand the DCEU with a multiverse of different versions of Batman, it wouldn't be a shock to see Robert Pattinson come into the fray and step into the battle alongside Ezra Miller. 2022 is already going to be a stacked year for the DCEU, with Black Adam and Aquaman 2 also hitting theatres. But what makes the upcoming release slate particularly intriguing is the fact that it will be a year in which we will see not one, not two, but three different versions of Batman on the big screen. Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton appearing in The Flash is already exciting enough, and with Robert Pattinson on deck to show audiences what he'll bring to the cow in the first of a new trilogy, it's certainly an exciting time to be a DC fan. Stay tuned for the latest news regarding Ezra Miller, blah, blah, blah. So I would assume maybe that's Humberto Gonzalez. I think he's the head of Heroic Hollywood. But he unpackages a lot. Now, some of you, fellow Snyder fans may say, well, this is a trick to try and get us excited and not keep on moaning about the central universe. And maybe it is a tactic, but I don't really care because whatever's going on with the Restore the Snyderverse thing, which I'm a part of, by the way, I'm not. I'm not going to boycott DC movies. I'm not going to boycott the Central Universe. I will never do that. I am the ultimate DC stan. I love these characters. And to think we're getting 4 fucking movies. We're finally getting a Black Adam movie, an Aquaman sequel, the Batman, and Flashpoint, where a film where the Flash is going to reboot the DCEU, but nothing will be forgotten. It's so exciting and intriguing to me. And I think the Batman is an interesting project. And will it be self-contained and away from everything else? Or will there be crossovers involved there? I think we could see him, Robert Pattinson's Batman, in the Flash movie. I think we're going to see a lot of characters in this movie. There's going to be a lot of cameos. This is going to be the statement going forward from Walter Hamada and Sarnoff and Jim Lee. This is going to be a very, very different universe going forward. After Flashpoint, everything, my friends, is going to change, whether we like it or not. Yeah, I'm holding this up again because a lot's been said about this movie. And you know what? Having morals in movies and TV shows and little animated cartoons for kids, having little moral stories to teach a lesson to the kids and the adults and everyone, have been in storytelling since the beginning of time. So it's not just this current era of films and storytelling. I just don't think they have the kind of, I suppose, tactfulness to tell these morals in these stories without winding people up. I think that's the problem. So a lot's been said about Wonder Woman 84, but I do think the film has a great moral in it, if you like. I do think it's like, hypocritical of people in Hollywood to be telling us this moral. But anyway, so in Wonder Woman 84, in probably the best sequence of the movie, which is when the Amazons are doing the Olympics and young Diana is running and taking part, it's sensational. Lily Aspel is just, she's just amazing, isn't she? She really is. She's so talented and she kills it in this opening sequence, and so does Patty Jenkins. So the whole idea of this is to teach Diana that cheaters never prosper. You shouldn't cheat. That's not the hero's journey. You shouldn't. Cheating to win means you lose, right? Even if you win. So the whole idea of this sequence is that Diana's doing well, but she falls off the horse or something. But then she takes a shortcut. She finds the horse again, and I don't think she wins, but she completes the challenge. And obviously, it's discovered that she cheated, and the 2 women in her life explain to her that we're sorry, we can't let you, we can't have people applauding you for this. You cheated. This is wrong. What you're doing is wrong, and you must understand this. And then you get that great monologue at the end of the film where Diana's not really talking to Maxwell Lord, but she is in a way. She's teaching him that what he's doing, getting everything he ever wanted, giving people everything they ever wanted, anyway, and the consequences to the world. These people are taking wishes. He's so greedy. He wants, and the world is burning around him, and he couldn't give a shit because his only focus is on what he wants. If they actually put the first part of Wonder Woman 84 and this part, I think this will be very powerful. It's a very powerful lesson. I think it is anyway. So if you've got issues with other sections of the film, fair enough, but I think Patty Jenkins has got a great all-round arc, and it's a great lesson for all of us to learn. And Wonder Woman learns this great lesson as a young girl, and she tries to impart this wisdom and solve the problems that Maxwell Lord has created. And she does. She realizes, she opens Maxwell's eyes to his son. That's the only thing. This is what led to his greed and everything. His son. He wanted to prove to his son that he was a great dad because he hadn't been thus far. But then Diana teaches him being a great father isn't about getting things and power and stuff. It's just being there with your child, watching TV, giving them a hug, right? Showing them that you love them, teaching them empathy. And that's the lesson of this movie. Now, I want to compare this to a situation in Superman the movie. Now, I'm a big fan of Superman the movie because it was the first film I ever saw, the first superhero film I ever saw. The film's amazing. For the time it was made, sensational. It's the reason I fell in love with Superman and DC as a kid. So Lois Lane dies in this film, in the third act, and Superman can't handle it. So he's enraged. He flies up to the sky. He can hear all the voices of both his fathers, Jonathan Kent and Jor-El. You are forbidden to interfere in human history. But he doesn't listen. My son, you are here for a reason. He keeps on flying. He goes round and round the globe, the Earth, and he turns the Earth around on its axis, right? He turns back time. It makes no sense scientifically, but this is a Superman movie, so I'm okay with that. But then Lois just comes back to life because he's gone back in time. But doesn't that mean that all the events have started again? I don't know anyway. So basically, no consequences. Lois is back to life. Everyone's happy. Everyone's smiling. He smiles at the camera in the end, and that's that. Superman cheated to save a life. No consequences. I think this was a terrible lesson to teach young people at that time. Now, I've not thought this for a long time. I woke up thinking this. Literally, that's how my mind works. I wake up what I'm going to talk about on this show, and then I have thoughts, and I thought about one, and actually this was on my bed as I was asleep. No, I wasn't doing anything dodgy. It was just there from the other day when I've got a very big bed. Anyway, right? Honestly! Anyway. So I was thinking about this really deeply, and I thought, Wonder Woman 84, whatever you think of the film, does teach you and teach children a really valuable lesson about morality and greed and, not being selfish and not just putting your own needs and wishes ahead of everybody else's in the world's, right? Where Superman literally cheats to bring back the woman he loves. And as I say, I think that's a terrible lesson. And I think then if we jump to the Flashpoint comic book adaptation, right, of Flashpoint, where it originated, you see Barry Allen go back in time to save his mother's life. What happens, as we've just been reading? Well, what happens is he creates another universe, right? The universe he knows, where his Justice League are at, his friends, all the people, at that time in the comics, his wife, Iris, and I think she's pregnant or something, if I remember rightly, all that's gone. And he's stuck in this dark world where the Amazons and the Atlanteans are at war. A brutal story where, Wonder Woman is a brutal killer and a seductress, a murderer. And where Aquaman isn't a good guy that he remembers from the central universe, from his original world. He went to save his mum and all hell's broke loose. So there's consequences in that story. That's what you should see in stories. But when Superman goes back in time to save Lois Lane's life, there are no consequences. Big smiles, da 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 da, na na na, because that's the kind of storytelling we had as kids. And some people hold that movie up so high, and I do. Don't get me wrong, I love it. I'm not trying to be a Superman the movie hater here. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm saying there should have been consequences for the sequel, right? It could have been a kind of a Flashpoint story, because at that time, 1978, I don't think Flashpoint had been done yet. It would have been amazing. It would have changed everything. It would have been a Flashpoint of its own, right? But I think if you do something like that as a storyteller, there's got to be consequences for your universe and the stories that you're telling in the future. And I think this is why Flashpoint, the original story, is genius. He lost his mum as a young boy. He saw her murdered by Reverse Flash. He goes back in time, and he undoes it. And there's real consequences. And Barry learns that he can never do this again, right? He can't do this again, because this is very similar to what happens in Wonder Woman 84. Barry learns the lesson that Maxwell Lord learns. But in Superman the movie, he doesn't learn that lesson. And I think, as I say, if you start putting out movies like that, and kids do take to heart what they see in movies, and, if they go to the theatre or anything, or a cartoon, we do take it in. And it's true, when I saw TJ Hooker and I saw Shatner throw his baton on somebody's legs, I tried it at school. I mean, I wasn't all there. I'm still not all there, so probably most kids wouldn't have done that. But we are influenced on what we see, and children are especially. So I think teaching children that things are easy and we can snap our fingers and things go back to normal isn't really a great lesson to teach them. But I think what Wonder Woman 84 does brilliantly, it says, look at what greed does, look what selfishness does, right? But it doesn't mean you can't be forgiven. Diana forgives Maxwell Lord in the end because she just sees a father He was just an ordinary guy. He went too far. People have died. Critics of the film have said people have died and there's no consequences for him. And that's true. He probably should do some jail time. There should have been a police officer or someone to take him away at the end. I agree. But I think Pedro Pascal did a great job, and I actually loved the character of Maxwell Lord in that film. So I think those elements of Wonder Woman 84 are high superior to what we saw in Superman the movie, because that's a great movie and it's a great achievement, but it just says that life's easy without any consequences. So I thought I'd just discuss that a little bit today. Comment down below and let me know what you think about what I've just been talking about. Wow, we live in such a polarizing world, not just politically speaking, but everything speaking. And, you know, movie Twitter can be the fucking worst at times. So I think we started off really happily when America woke up yesterday, and we saw a fabulous trailer for Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, which I'm really looking forward to. Listen, I'm not a zombie guy. I'm going to watch the film probably once. I will enjoy it and probably I won't watch it again. Now, if it's that great, of course, I'll love it and I'll tell everyone I love it. And I'll review it on this channel, of course I will. But I'm a DC stan at the end of the day, and I love Zack and everything, but I would never put a zombie movie above my love for that. You know, a love for Zack, even though I do love Zack. So we had a really kind of positive start with that trailer. I watched it quite a few times because I got a lot out of it. I like these zombies, and Zack said a very interesting thing actually, where you know, in real life, if they were fighting, if we fought zombies, it'd be very different to how it is in the movies, because in the movies they make it look easy. And what Zack's saying, and I think we can see it here with his zombies are fucking fucked up, powerful, and I like that. So I don't like the Walking Dead zombies because at the start of the show, they were more dangerous, but they're too slow. They're easily beaten up. And I know why they do it in that show, and maybe that's how it was done in the comics. I've never read the Walking Dead comics, by the way. But your zombies should be scary as shit, and they should pose a real threat to you. And they should be fast, and they should be strong, which we've seen in this trailer. So that was very, very exciting. So I went to bed happy. Everyone in the Snyder community was happy. And then I woke up to see that HBO Max did the most toxic thing they could do, or from the outside looking in. They put this trailer together, which basically is encouraging people to watch Zack Snyder's DCEU movies. So they called it Zack Snyder's Trilogy. So this obviously triggered me and the rest of the fandom. And why is that? Well, basically, it's like they're telling us there's going to be no more. We're giving you no more. It's just a trilogy, guys and girls and everyone else. That's the end of it. That's all you're getting. So don't expect any more. I think it kind of came across that way. I mean, it could be them just saying, Zack Snyder's got a trilogy of DC films. Go watch them. But it did seem from the trailer, you should go and see it, they were saying this is Zack Snyder's trilogy. Like, you know, the Dark Knight trilogy is Christopher Nolan's trilogy, and he's not doing any more, and that's that. I think that's the kind of message, that's how it came across. At this moment in time, the way I'm looking at things and treating things in my heart and my soul and my mind is that they have no intention, no matter what we do and say, to restore the Snyderverse. They used the Snyder Cut to launch their streaming platform, and it worked. They broke the release window. It's working for them. It's been a great year thus far for Warner Media. And James Gunn's The Suicide Squad is going to be, I think, just as successful, if not more. So they're doing well now. So they don't need to restore the Snyderverse. They don't want to restore the Snyderverse. And I think that's what they were putting out there. They were trying to make it clear in a way. And of course I'm upset with them about that, but they're a business, they're in charge, they hold the IP, they can do whatever they want. There's not much we can do about it, but keep on fighting and keep on hashtagging, and I will keep on doing that, and I would never advise anyone not to do that. It's up to you if you stay on HBO Max and use their, you know, and use, listen, I don't have HBO Max here in Cyprus. I may not have it for 5 years, so it's not an option for me, right? There's nothing I can do, but I know on the 22nd to 24th of April, whenever it is, I will buy digitally on Amazon Prime Video, Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. And when it comes out on 4K Blu-ray, I'll probably buy it on 4K. I might even buy a little DVD copy as well, so I can watch it somewhere else in the house. That's how I'm going to support Zack, and I think I've been very supportive towards Zack, but I've also been balanced in my conversations about the DCEU. It's lost me subscribers because a lot of Snyder stans believe that you should just say all the good and positive things and leave out everything else. And I don't. I'm a balanced guy. I'm a DC fan. I love Zack, but I don't wake up for Zack. My inspiration in waking up, and as sad and as pathetic as this sounds, is the DC universe. I've loved it ever since I was a 10, 12-year-old boy watching Superman the movie. Inspirational. And so that's what I stand. And whoever makes these films, as long as they do these films justice, I will be positive and support these movies. And that's where I'm at. So, yes, from the outside looking in, it looks like they're saying to us, you're getting nothing else, guys. This is it. So we were used. Do you remember when HBO Max would reply to us at first when the Snyder Cut was greenlit? You know, can we have this? Can we have that? One thing at a time, they said. So they never promised us anything, but it did sound like they would it sounded like they were interested in doing more. So something's changed, or maybe they never had any intention of doing more. I think I may have mentioned this yesterday, but I'm going to mention it again because I think it's really, really important, everyone, that we're kind of in this situation because I believe that what Ann Sarnoff said in that Variety hit piece, she spoke for every single person at Warner Media and AT&T. John Stankey, everyone, Jason Keeler, everyone. I don't think this is the divided camp we were led to believe. These people used us to launch their streaming service, and we used them in a way because we wanted this cut desperately. So what are my thoughts? If this is the end of the road for the DC Snyderverse, what do I think? I think this was a shit show from day one, as I've said before. It was everyone and nobody's fault. It was the beginning. It was an experiment financially that didn't work for the studio. Yes, you can argue, and someone on my comments argued yesterday, that Zack Snyder's DC movies have made good money. Yes, they've made good money, but they haven't made enough money, right? They haven't made as much money as Jason Momoa's Aquaman movie, over $1 billion, or Joaquin Phoenix's Todd Phillips' Joker movie. These films have made a lot of money, right? Now, Zack Snyder's movies are great and they've made good money, but they polarized the audience. And Zack said himself that everyone keeps on talking about these films, and that's great, but ultimately, and there's something else we need to talk about, because all over my timeline yesterday, it was great, the positivity for Army of the Dead and Zack, supporting Zack. But people say, oh, well, you know, Toby sold Army of the Dead to Netflix. Why did he do that? That's stupid. He should be fined. It's very different. The mentality of a studio and the mentality of Netflix is very different. Warner Brothers, we don't live in the era now where studios just put out middling movies and then they only put out big blockbusters that they want to make $1 billion in the summer. It's blockbusters all the way now. So they looked at Army of the Dead and they said, this film isn't going to really make us much. They didn't see the potential in it. It happens all the time. It's like when a team sells a footballer, then the footballer becomes successful at another club. And it's a little bit embarrassing for the selling club and that manager. It's a little bit embarrassing for Toby. It's gone to Netflix. Zack wanted Warner Brothers to develop it. Warner Brothers and Toby said no. This happens all the time. This is not a big thing in the industry, and sometimes it works out. I don't think Army of the Dead would have. I think Army of the Dead, if everything was normal without any COVID restrictions, probably would make a solid 500, maybe 300 and something million at the box office, which is amazing. You would think a studio would want that. But as I say, a studio mentality is very different to a streaming mentality, right? Because, yes, HBO Max, it could have been an HBO Max original and it would have brought, butts in seats. So I don't know why they didn't want it. It wasn't something they were looking at. These things happen, I'm afraid. And also, they are scared of Zack in what he does in movies, and maybe they just... Listen, the thing is with Zack Snyder, opposed to other directors, he does things that he wants to do, whether the studio tell him not to do it or not. It's like having a naughty child. I love Zack, but it's difficult for a studio. Now, Netflix, it's easy. You know, they give creatives freedom and they can do what they want. It's easy for them. They don't care. They just want good content. They want audiences to come. And they believe that the way they do things works out for their platform, and it does all the time, right? But Warner Brothers are different. Warner Brothers do let some directors like James Gunn and Matt Reeves and Todd Phillips and other creatives do what they want. But in a way, Zack can be a bit of a loose cannon. He's very open and honest what he says with the press as well, which can be embarrassing for a studio. So it's very difficult. So yes, looking at the situation now, all I can see is that we're not going to restore the Snyderverse, but we keep on fighting in hope, because you never know what's possible in this world. But yeah, it's not looking good. It's looking like that trilogy trailer basically is telling us they're not interested in doing any more, or it's just a bloody trailer and we've kind of misunderstood the whole situation. Listen, Zack Snyder's Justice League was a very successful film for Warner Media on HBO Max. They're burying the numbers because they don't want to do any more and they don't want any proof that this was successful. They can't hide that. They can tell us what's been successful already for them without talking about the Snyder Cut. It doesn't matter. This is a film that made a lot of money. Everyone, not just the fans, want more of this, and you're denying us that. Is it out of cruelty? Are you being mean? Or do you just not want to work with this creative anymore? I think you just don't want to work with this creative because you think he's more trouble than he's worth. And so I think he will probably do his work on Netflix from now on, and that will be that. But I'm so glad we got the Snyder Cut, because I didn't want to be left with Justice League. That would have been an absolute mess. Ultimately, my goal and the reason my optimism was to have Zack Snyder's Justice League fit into the rest of the DCEU and boot out Justice League. But that hasn't happened, unfortunately. And because Zack Snyder's Justice League contradicts some of Aquaman as well, it's difficult to slot it in there. And Flashpoint is going to make sense of everything, thankfully. I know I don't want the Snyderverse to be burnt either, but you do need a cohesive franchise that makes sense going forward. And it's the old thing again, isn't it, really, that Kevin Feige was running Marvel Studios pretty much even before Disney bought it. But when Disney bought it, they could have easily said, off you go, mate. We're going to do whatever we want here. We're here now, the big boys. Yeah, man, cowboy hats off. But they didn't do that. Kevin Feige had a plan to do what nobody ever did before. There've been franchises before, but this was literally the kind of ethics of a TV series where you do these films. One continues from the other. They can still stand alone, but they're part of the same universe, but other characters can be in other people's films. And it worked. It worked bigger than anybody thought. And Disney saw the future and kept faith with Feige's vision. And it worked, right? And he had so many problems at the beginning with it. So many. Fans hated him. He was having problems with, bureaucrats and things like that. But they at least let him reveal his vision in his Avengers movie. And once that movie was successful in a bigger way than anyone ever imagined, because no one had ever seen a successful team-up movie apart from X-Men, really. So it was a big success. And from that moment on, after the first Avengers, the domino effect of this franchise, it just went from strength to strength. From Feige, I think Ben Affleck is right. Kevin Feige is a genius, and that's the difference. Warner Brothers didn't keep faith with Zack's vision, because we did Man of Steel. People were outraged. We did Batman versus Superman. There was a polarizing, divisive reaction. And then the decisions they made where Justice League was involved, it was crazy. And as I say, it was everyone's and nobody's fault, because how do you cope with these reactions to these movies? Because they could have just been inspired by the MCU and got someone like Bruce Timm who does know what he's doing, and I think we would be in a similar place to the MCU. You'd still have your dark movies. It wouldn't just be a joke for kids, but I think what we're doing going forward now, we are going to try and make some movies for families and children. We will make the adult ones as well. There'll be a mixture. And basically the rule is that it's all interconnected, the multiverse strategy, bringing in cameos. And this is what the Flashpoint movie will do as well. You're going to see so many multiple cameos. And that's what's exciting. And this is what the audiences want to see now, whether we like it or not. So I think, yes, that trilogy trailer tells us in no uncertain terms that we will not restore the Snyderverse, no matter how hard we try. Let me know what you think about that one. And we're reaching the final part of the show. You're saying, thank fuck for that. That's not very nice, is it? Anyway, we go to Superfan, DC Superfan, in fact, Scott Edwards. Well, I think he's a fan of everything. At Movies TV Mad, thanks for the shout out. Oh man, I have an idea for the main topic of the DCEU Daily tomorrow. Zack Snyder's Justice League versus the Avengers. The first Avengers film, I love both films as origin stories for both teams and was wondering if you could compare. At Movies TV Mad, compare them and talk about your thoughts on both of them. Compare and contrast what each film did better over the other. Right, well, this is going to be a really interesting conversation. So, Avengers Assemble, the first Avengers, written and directed by Joss Whedon, and it's called Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. Right, yes, Scott, we're not going to be comparing Justice League, just so we're clear here. It wouldn't be fair, would it? Because Avengers Assemble would win and it just wouldn't be worth talking about. Anyway, right? It would be interesting, though, to compare those two films, Joss Whedon's Justice League and Avengers Assemble, but let's compare them fairly. Right, let's talk about Joss Whedon's Avengers Assemble. Joss Whedon's Avengers Assemble is the perfect storm, if you like. It continues from the 4 or 5 or whatever origin movies we've seen thus far. We've seen Captain America, the first Avenger. We've seen 2 Iron Man movies. I think we've seen The Incredible Hulk, and we've seen a Thor movie as well. So these characters have been introduced, and I think it was very, very clever to bring in a character and a villain we'd already had in a previous movie. And I think if we're going to bring in the Steppenwolf thing here, nobody knew jack shit about Steppenwolf. Very few people, unless you're a deep, graphic novel fan, knew anything about the New Gods and Steppenwolf. And I know a little bit about Darkseid, but most people don't, right? Anyway, so I think what Avengers Assemble has over Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut, we're being reunited with a villain we already know and we already like. And I think that's very, very important, I do. Because by having this villain we've already seen in the first movie, it gives you emotion. So you've got the history between Thor and Loki. Right? And then Loki becomes a bigger villain, the main villain. He's working for someone else behind the scenes. He pretty much, in a way, is it's kind of very similar. Zack does a similar thing here because Steppenwolf is, talking to Desaad, and finally he talks to Darkseid. And it's very similar here because, really, basic, but I've forgotten his bloody name. Loki. How can I forget someone's name? I just mentioned it. Anyway, and so Loki is kind of reporting back to Thanos, isn't he? If I remember rightly. I can't remember if he's reporting back to somebody else before Thanos. He may be. I can't remember. I haven't seen Avengers Assemble for ages. But, yeah, he does report back to Thanos, doesn't he? So it's a very similar kind of beat here. The only difference between the two films is we already know Loki, and he's got this relationship with Thor, and it works. That's why I like it. It works. This is what Feige does. He brings characters from the past, he keeps it moving, and it's like a continuing saga, like a TV series or a soap, but not done in a soapy way, of course. And so that's what I think Avengers Assemble has over Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. But we finally get to see Zack Snyder's real Steppenwolf. He's imposing, he's intimidating, he's awesome. He's an awesome villain, but ultimately the same problem. Actually, this is another similar thing from both films. Steppenwolf is easily defeated by Superman. And Loki is easily defeated and beaten up by the Hulk in the end. There's not much you can do about that. Once you put those... It's very funny. It's a funny little ending when he's going, whoom, 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 whoom. But it's an anti-climax. And it's an anti-climax when Superman defeats Steppenwolf so easily. I hate easily defeated villains, right? I think what's so good about Man of Steel, whether you like the neck snapping of Zod or not, at least Zod took a lot to defeat, and it was a long drawn out fight as well. So I think that's kind of better. And so I think both films kind of missed the boat there. But I think both of these films get it right. I think the Marvel do what's right for the tone of their franchise, and Kevin Feige makes sure that it's child friendly at the same time as being adult in places as well. In fact, he kind of straddles the line really, really well. Look, the Avengers Assemble movie was the first kind of team-up movie, as I say, apart from the X-Men movies, and I think it really does work for everyone. Now, Zack Snyder's Justice League is an R-rated Justice League movie. It's dark, it's bold, it's operatic, it's compelling. It's really uncomparable, really, and we were never going to get that version of the film originally anyway. We've got 2 hours, 50 minutes at most. I'm not going to sit here and say which one's better. I mean, personally, I think Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut is a more ambitious movie, but then the Marvel movies are not supposed to be that ambitious. They're ambitious in scope and the way they tell their stories, yes, but it's just meant to serve the audience. It's basically the MCU just does the next chapter of the MCU. That's what it's about, and that's what I'm talking about, the genius of Kevin Feige. It works. It's like when you buy the next volume of a comic book. It's just the next chapter. This is what Kevin Feige did, and it was genius. But Zack Snyder's Justice League is a beast, Scott. And I think when I look at the heroes and the villains, I think the heroes kind of mixed together really well in both movies. I think the action, obviously, Zack's action is better than Joss's action. But Whedon did a good thing, a good job with Avengers Assemble. We can't change that. Whedon's got great qualities. Unfortunately, what happened with Justice League, I can't justify it at all. But in terms of both these films, it's very difficult to say, oh, this one did this right. I could tell you that I think that the ease of the villain's defeats was both anticlimactic, and I was disappointed at that. But mostly, I think both films can be taken separately and really well enjoyed. They're both great team-up movies, and I think Avengers Assemble won't be forgotten because it was the first of its type. But Zack Snyder's Justice League will never be forgotten, because it's so damn different and unique and operatic and beautiful. So they're both great movies, Scott. And finally today, we're talking about the DCEU finally. And Scott has found a brilliant article from Screen Rant. Let's give it a check out. DCEU, 10 characters who could be the villain of Ezra Miller's The Flash. Now, this has been something people have been talking about for a very long time, isn't it? Who's going to be the villain of the Flash movie? So let's have a look. So the DCEU's own movie for The Flash starring Ezra Miller is in the works, but fans don't know who the villain is yet. Who could it be? Someone old or new? By Melody McCready. After years of development, The Flash is getting his own live-action DCEU movie directed by Andy Muschietti and starring Ezra Miller. Fans are more anticipated for this enigma of a comic book movie after Ezra's Barry Allen was showcased much better in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Very few details about the story have been revealed other than it's a new story inspired by other comic storylines. And currently there is no official confirmation as to who the main villain is. So who would be powerful enough to need the combined forces of the Flash and multiple versions of Batman and Supergirl? Gorilla Grodd. Now, I'd love to see Gorilla Grodd because we haven't seen him in the DCEU thus far, and it would be amazing. One of the Flash's most iconic foes, Gorilla Grodd, is a genius who could create a way to use interdimensional transit. However, Grodd in the comics is not the kind of character that wants to destroy the multiverse. Still, the DC Extended Universe has already made several unique changes to characters. Perhaps Grodd's aspirations are a bit bigger this time around. Instead of wiping one Earth of all humanity, he wants to rid all worlds of them. Maybe. Daniel West. Now, I don't know this character. Let's have a look who Daniel West is. The second Reverse Flash, Daniel West, is Iris West's brother who wants nothing more than to murder his own father. With the DCEU, his madness could lead to even more complex plot involving him travelling the multiverse and creating chaos. Actually, I've never heard of this character before, but he sounds fucking awesome. I wouldn't mind him either. Unfortunately, Daniel West in the first Flash movie would be a bit of a rush since Kiersey Clemons, Iris herself, has had one scene in the DCEU. Would be better to save him for a future sequel, but the involvement of the character is still a probability. Another monstrous speedster, Black Flash, is the Grim Reaper of speedsters. A way to involve him is by having Barry living on borrowed time as the multiverse is being destroyed. As a result, Barry is constantly being chased throughout the film. I would love, that would be a great idea. Black Flash would be a perfect way to add tension with Barry trying to keep himself from fading away and outtrace the creature. As a bonus, Black Flash could provide a horror for the film, which would be no problem for the director since he previously made Stephen King's It. 7. Dr. Alchemy. Using the Philosopher's Stone, Dr. Alchemy has the ability to transmute any element. It's not exactly far-fetched to think alchemy discovers the way to transmute elements into a way to travel from universe to universe. 6. What we got here? Vibes. Easy motivation. He's beaten by Barry and as revenge and wants to eliminate him from the multiverse. Perhaps he joins forces with other villains, including the Rogues, to get the job done. Sorry, that was just that was still dripping down from the other one we were talking about. Dr. Alchemy. Anyway, 6. Vibe. Francisco Ramon is typically depicted as a hero, but the DCEU could take things in a different direction. Perhaps this vibe gets his powers when Darkseid arrives in the nightmare future, shown in Zack Snyder's Justice League, but seeing they're not going to continue from Snyder's verse, this is unlikely. As a result, he becomes so determined to prevent Darkseid and an evil Superman. Vibe begins to traverse the multiverse, and he erases the Justice League, trying to stop that future for every Earth. But as a result, he is causing more deaths than Darkseid. Vibe could be more a tragic anti-hero whom Flash has to stop by trying to make him into a hero. 5. Mirror Master. The character's main abilities are all about travelling through a mirror dimension. Alternate universes are in a way a mirror of other worlds, so Mirror Master discovering a way to traverse the multiverse is not far-fetched. With the DCEU, Mirror Master could be altered to be given a more complex story than an evil assassin. CW's Arrowverse is a perfect example of how much Mirror Master can be changed into a more powerful villain. In that universe, the name of Mirror Master is also used by multiple people. 4. Captain Cold. Obviously, Captain Cold is one of Barry Allen's greatest foes. He often leads a group of Flash's enemies called the Rogues, with Captain Cold as the main villain. The Rogues could be working together to kill the Flash in all worlds, including the DCEU. This world allows for audiences to see that he's not a Mr. Freeze ripoff. He's an intelligent criminal and a strategist who has a moral code. He never hearts civilians unless absolutely necessary, never to be cruel. Hearts, you mean kills. Prometheus. The best way to describe Prometheus is an anti-Batman, a psychotic genius who witnessed his parents murdered by the police. He now seeks to eradicate all forms of a justice system. The moniker of Prometheus has been worn by many people across DC history, so the DCEU could do anything with the character. Perhaps he becomes determined to destroy superheroes across the multiverse, or even destroy the multiverse itself. The character is crazy enough, and he has killed and wounded many superheroes before. This makes him a fit for the DCEU, considering how dark some of their villains can be. 2. Reverse Flash. The most obvious and likely villain is the Reverse Flash, aka Eobard Thawne. Batman has Joker, Superman has Lex Luthor, and Barry Allen has the Reverse Flash. Reverse Flash's entire scheme is to destroy Barry Allen physically, emotionally, and psychologically. Reverse Flash also wants to be the one true speedster. He can't have that with a multiverse of speedsters out there and likely alternate versions of Barry. Thawne is crazy enough to attempt killing spree that big and likely uses other villains as pawns. The director and his wife producer even tease Thawne on social media. I need to tell you something. It's not his wife. It's his sister. You need to do your research. I'm sorry. Anyway, number one, Nightmare Flash. This is never going to happen because Snyder's verse is getting burnt down in this movie, not being used. Anyway, Reverse Flash is a little too obvious, so why not trick the audience? An evil speedster creating havoc could lead viewers to speculate Eobard Thawne in the climax. It is revealed to be Barry Allen himself from the nightmare future, gone mad from all the death of those he cares about. Think about it. What happened to Nightmare Flash after he warned Bruce Wayne in Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice? It's never shown. Perhaps he discovered the multiverse and the many alternate realities where Darkseid wins, thus turning him into a villain. It's a great idea, but it's never going to happen because they're not going to continue Zack's universe, and they're not going to use that element, and they've already made the decisions what to do. I think we're going to see Reverse Flash in this movie. Maybe not necessarily the main villain. There may not be a main villain. The main challenge of this movie for Flash is going to be to undo what he's done. So he may not need. I think there'll be a sprinkle of a few villains, and I think they won't totally ignore the Amazonian Atlantean war either. I don't think Wonder Woman can be that brutal in it, but there's going to be ways around it. That battle might be in the background, but there's going to be challenges for the Flash to deal with in this new universe he's created, and I think this is how they're going to go at this movie. I'm excited for all 4 DCEU movies next year. It's going to be awesome. I'm still binging Zack Snyder's Justice League. That was a great achievement as well. It's all great. We're very lucky. Let's love what we love and not hate other people's loves. Let's be positive. Let's be friends, and everything will be okay. Comment down below, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow with even more DCEU Daily. See you again soon.